table, Larry. This way, Larry. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started again. If you're following the agenda, we had a FY26 budget forecast, continued conversation from last night. There's nothing new to present on that, so we're just going to move that item to the end whenever we give guidance to staff. So we're going to move on to the Community Investment Fund forecast and project prioritization, and this will be handled by Kelly and Michael.
Thank you. Thank you. So, projects underway. We wanted to give a brief update on the ones that are underway currently. So the Behavioral Health Center, this is a shot from about 2 weeks ago, I think. The building pad is completely done. We were out there yesterday. So a lot of the underground work has been done. It's probably about 20% complete at this point. So you will start seeing the building pad being poured and more activity out there, more vertical construction soon. So the Afton Library and Active Living Center, we are finishing up the punch, and we can't seem to get a front desk to save our lives. So we're trying to work with on that, but we do have the date for March 11th for the ribbon cutting at this point. If we have to proceed, we will put up tables and just start work because we don't want to wait much longer. They are still shelving books, as we talked about. They had 40 pallets of books and other materials that they're putting out. So fitness equipment came in. So a couple more things like that we're putting the finishing touches on the building, but we will be doing the ribbon cutting March 11th. The Governmental Center basement renovation. This is where we're going to put child support. It is complete now, punch list.
Putting cubicles in.
Putting the cubicles in, so we'll be moving them in shortly. The Cabarrus County Department of Social Services at Progress Place. So this is obviously the previous ACM building. We are starting to put our label on it now. So we have, we're working with Creech to provide design services. So obviously there'll be design services related to the replacement of the HVAC systems, roof replacement. There will be really the main actual renovation would be to provide a front counter, service counter when you come in the building. And so there's electrical and technological upgrades, things of that nature that will be happening, ADA compliance. So those are the type of things that we'll be doing, new signage. We are hoping, we also have a RFQ going out for CM at risk for this project. So we'll be working on those things in the next couple of months. And so just as a side note, the Cannon building lease will expire in May of 2027, so we will have to have everything complete and moved over by then. The schedule at this point of when we move people over will depend on a couple of key issues that we have to address with Creech. As soon as we know that, we'll be able to provide a good update as to when we can actually get people in the building. If we have opportunities to move them over quickly, we will move them as quickly as possible. So this is the adopted CIP from 2024, 2025. Super small, but this one. Yeah. So Obviously, when we went to the LGC to get funding for the projects, we encountered some different plans than we had initially gone to them with. So the county budget adopted the projects that you see here for 24-25. Thank you. That's better. So of those projects, most of those are underway. However, the public safety training facility, the new elementary school that was going to be either Harrisburg or Northwest Cabarrus area, the Workforce Innovation Center that Dr. Spalding mentioned this morning, and the renovations at the S203 building on the South Campus were not included in that package because they were not at a bid point. So with the lobs, we did have to have things bid and ready to go. So those projects were not able to move forward. So those are outstanding as far as what we would do with those. So those are some things to consider. These are known projects that we've had out on the books for a number of years, one way or another, and we would be things that you would look at for prioritization. The A.L. Brown School renovations, which they were just here mentioning, some HVAC work there, more work at the South Campus, the animal shelter replacement. We had the household hazardous waste with that as a potential opportunity, but both will not fit on that site, so it will just be the animal shelter there. We'll continue to look at a different location for the household hazardous waste. The IM grounds maintenance building replacement, we did have $800,000 out there to do a design on that in Pago, but we've kind of pulled that one back because we don't anticipate being able to do that in this coming year, the actual structure. Obviously, all of the parks have a number of needs. Camp Spencer is probably the one of the higher needs. The Chester property was the one we just purchased. That one will be very limited in scope because it does have a conservation easement on it. And so it was purchased with the intention of being an equine facility, so being able to take the horses out and ride. So those trails would have to be dirt. They can't be improved trails. So that was kind of the idea, had been maybe a playground, some bathrooms, a washing station for the horses and the equipment, and trails, not much else. So that one will be a fairly small job when we get to it. Frank Lisk turf and soccer fields is out there. Rob Wallace Park has more phases that we could go into. St. Stephen's, we've just finished master designing that. Vietnam veterans, we do have a priority there on the boardwalk. The boardwalk is in very bad condition and does need to be handled one way or another. We've been pursuing different options on that, trying to figure out what the most economical choice would be. And then Concord Library has some renovations that we've discussed where we were talking about trying to get the staff and the circulation desk at the center of the building so that they can see all corners of the library for better safety, better ability to see all the patrons in there. Harrisburg is bursting at the seams especially during the fall when there's a lot of sports activities. We have parking problems, severe parking problems where people cannot get to the library. So that one's a concern. And they are having to hold at least 2 of their programs for children every time because they don't have the capacity or the room capacity to house everybody at one time. So that one's pretty intense from that standpoint. The Kannapolis Library at some point, the YMCA has been after us on that one as well as the city of Kannapolis. So, as far as capacity and all that, it's not terrible, but we probably will at some point have to move away from that particular site, and may want to work with Kannapolis on a downtown location that's walkable. And then, of course, Midland's been out there. We have looked at a number of properties. There was a project about 10 years ago that would have involved the town hall and us being on the second floor of that town hall, but that did not occur. So that was what transpired, excuse me, for the leasing of the building. So we have looked again at a number of properties for that, but have not found an appropriate property for that. Okay. So, again, these are some photos and some things that we have discussed. The Frank List Park second entrance, I believe we've already identified that as a huge priority due to the traffic that we currently have and the rail spur that's going to be used soon. So we have gotten some rough pricing of $5 million for that project. So that one has been discussed a good bit. Vietnam Veterans Park. This is kind of an example of some of the different options for replacing that boardwalk. It's sinking, it's unlevel. So we either have to replace it or eliminate that amenity. We think we have a price around $500,000 that would replace that boardwalk. We've got a couple of options where we could do wood planks or composite type things. It gets more expensive. Wood's the cheapest. So.
How old is that boardwalk?
Ooh.
It's original to the park.
Yeah, 90s.
Okay.
And it's been, we worked on it a few times, but it just continues to sink because of where it's built.
Right.
Yeah. It would benefit from some modern engineering techniques.
So if we went with a composite product and
I'm sorry.
that would be a little bit more durable.
Yes, sir.
But how about the sinking? Would
Yeah,
it?
the idea is to put in a pier system that would go down and we'd achieve the proper bearing capacity there and get something that would stay in place. Yeah, and then build it up with a metal frame, galvanized metal.
Okay.
And then use composite decking boards.
Okay.
So we had an option price to do it that way, and an option price to do it with lumber, which obviously wouldn't stand up at this time like the composite will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the metal is metal with wood
Either option has a metal
decking.
frame, yeah.
Yeah.
So it should stay, at the elevation we build it at.
Yeah, so it's just how often you want to replace the decking if we go that route. But that would be our, go ahead.
What's the difference in price for those?
Do you remember that off the top of your head?
The cheapest option was like 300,000.
Yeah, and we,
So the composite would be like 500,000 and then.
yeah, well,
There
yeah,
were options that the engineers threw out there up to like 900.
yeah,
So that's when we started talking about doing something different.
yeah. And so we had looked at going the wood route. The reason you see 500,000 there is because the pricing didn't include the pilings that we would be driving. And so we included some cost in there to cover that. So that was the wood price, right, with the, yeah. So the 500,000, by the time you were done, that's what you'd be looking at.
So that's
Wood.
the cheaper.
That's cheaper. Yeah. Yeah, so,
So the 900, is that the composite?
The 900 was like a concrete. That isn't reflected in what we're planning on doing.
yeah. Yeah, we eliminated that one based on cost.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the animal shelter replacement that has come to a new priority. Our current facility is aged and overcrowded. We did purchase this property last year. We did not, at that time, obtain sewer allocation because we thought it would be further out. So we are going to pursue that in the next couple of, or the next cycle that they have, getting our sewer allocation for that. Right now, we're getting a cost estimate of $500 to $550 a square foot to replace. This is just a test design that was placed on the site. to make sure when we were purchasing it that we could fit what we needed to fit. So that is not the actual design of it. That was just kind of a sample design based on the sizing that we would need and the parking and those type of factors.
Do we know, or what is the projected, like, volume of animals that the shelter would be able to hold in comparison to what we have now?
This test fit was like 20,000 square feet, and the current shelter is like 7,000. And there's, the blue squares on there are like potential future expansions, and there's like 9,000 square feet there we could expand in the future. And all the parking was sized for the biggest size building. So this is kind of a worst case, well, I don't want to call it worst case, but the biggest possible type building we could build on that site.
And so I did just a minute ago cover the Concord Library renovations. There's also the issue of the alley. We do want to address the alley at some point. We've looked at different ways to activate that and make it more inviting so more people are comfortable coming down it. So that is on the list of things we would like to do as well, just to provide a safer environment coming down that alley, because it is the access from the parking deck to the building. It's on the left side of this picture from where you see here. So this is a list of PAYGO projects that were approved in '25. A number of those are underway. Some are critical and about to begin. We pulled back on a couple of those based on conversations. But I just wanted to make sure that you all had seen the list because this was adopted before some of the board members were on here. So in '24, the total lobs with closing out the previous ban that we had open and the purchase of the ACN and associated activities there, and the final package of lobs, which was mostly schools except the library, came out to a total of $417 million. So we had budgeted for $350 million, but that wasn't including that ban from the previous one. So we're under what we had initially planned in total debt right now. So just want to make that clear because it doesn't really sound it that way, but the ban was already in a previous package and for that purpose, or accounted for debt-wise in a previous package. So right now, we're projecting our capacity in FY '26 at $100 million without changing anything with what we put into the account annually. In '28, we're estimating $60 million of capacity, again, without changing anything that we enter into that now. That's where we're putting $37 million over annually to this account to pay for debt or PAYGO projects or anything like that. I think even some of the leases come out of this account. If you want to spend more than that, we would have to make adjustments somewhere in the budget. We wouldn't go out for debt until '26, but this gives you some time to be thinking about what your priorities are, because obviously there's some school projects that didn't get done. There's some other requests still coming forth from them, and as well as Rowan Cabarrus and decisions to be made, in the long term about the public safety training facility, and some of the other smaller things at the parks and various, projects throughout the county. Most of those are smaller in nature, though. And that is generally the things that we have out there. We anticipated a lot of needs through the schools, so we, looked at what we had. Like I said, that list is out there at the bottom of the adopted CIP, so that everybody was aware that there were other things out there. But, as far as need to move on those, we've highlighted the ones we feel like we need to move on in the near future. And from that, we're looking for you to give us some feedback on anything that we did not name that you feel like shouldn't be moving forward, or that we did name and you think should not be moving forward.
Thank you for that. I think we have all agreed that the second entrance to Franklin Park is number one priority for us. It's a safety issue. There's a number of issues with that. We are working on trying to get some state funding for that as well. But any questions, comments?
I'd just like to point out, you mentioned still hadn't acquired land for the new public library and living center in Midland. We already have the land for the Southeast High School down there, and they do have to extend sewer down to that property. But as they pointed out to me, with the general sewer system being already taken care of pretty much, they're anticipating very soon having 1,500 new homes down there. They're going to need that high school. So that needs to be moved higher up on the priority list than it is. I've been told like 2030. I got a feeling they may need it before then. So we need to try to get that higher up on the priority list.
The schools come and tell us their priorities, do they not? Isn't that's us overstepping?
Typically they
I mean,
do.
the schools are the ones who come and, they've already said that Central, Cabarrus, and Northwest are higher on their priority list than that.
I know whenever I attended briefly the Cabarrus County Schools retreat, the high school in Midland came up. It was asked, and at that time, and that was just a month ago, that was not a priority for the school system. No, you know, that they work through those priorities, and you know, and if they bring that to us as a priority, then you know, which they'll be here later today, so we can ask. We can certainly ask the superintendent and the school system about where that falls in their priority list. Yeah.
I just hate to see it go on and on and on, you know, without even being on the priority list. I've said before, we need to get that done and stop busing kids from down there at Midland to Central Cabarrus and Hickory Ridge. They need that school down there.
We'll definitely ask superintendent about that when he makes his presentation today about
I know.
how many students would be in that area, and, you know, who would be having to be bused. I'm open to the conversation, absolutely.
And I know you've asked for our opinions on what we'd like to see. Probably not a popular opinion in here, but I absolutely think that the public safety training facility should be above the animal shelter. You said 20,000, about 20,000 square feet. That's about $11 million. It looks like, and we could talk, we've been talking about Camp Spencer for years. The shelter's there. There's a lot of other things, and in my eyes, I would just, and I know that's important, but I would never put the needs of an animal over the needs of our public training facility. So I personally would like to see the public training facility go up as a priority. You asked for our opinion, that's mine, so I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely, and I don't think that these are in any order of priority as far as the slides, so.
They give off that impression, but I don't think that's the case. It's just kind of, and I hear what you're saying about this public safety training facility. You know, I don't think any of us, you know, would be against that at all. I think there are a number of issues that we need to work out before we can even get it to the point of pulling the trigger on that. And I think some of those things are being worked out.
They are, we're working on those, and they were not in any particular order other than what I was thinking at the moment was I was typing.
Yeah.
So,
That's like the way it looked like.
yeah, no, I did not mean for it to look like that. It was just what it was at the top of my head when I was working.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I pretty much agree with that. I was wondering, could we have Sheriff Shaw speak to that issue of the training center?
I'm not opposed to that if the sheriff would like to take a moment to speak.
I would just say, and thank you, it is an important
issue. We've been at the present location for well over 25 years. There's some inherent problems with the water, the difficulties in getting county water and sewer out there. The current site's just not conducive to expansion. With that said, our discussions have taken on a joint training center to include the city of Concord as well as our county fire agencies, our volunteer fire agencies, emergency management, fire marshal's office. And so we're moving through that process. And I think we don't, while it is a priority, I think we still have a number of issues to work through. And being completely transparent is some of that process has been kind of a wish list, which really expanded the scope of that training facility with an enormous price tag. And I think in all honesty, we need to go back to the table and dial that down a little bit and really look at, what's our priority that first couple of years, and then expansion down the road. So I just think there's a number of discussion, and we've done a lot over the past, I guess, Kelly, would it be fair to say 18 months of just, seeing, trying to address every need. But then I think now we're at a point where we really need to prioritize that and come back with a good proposal, a good governance proposal, how we're going to run this. When you get more and more entities involved, you get more and more interest involved. And so I think we've got to make sure that we set ourselves up for success. And, that's what I'm looking at is long after I've gone, that it continues to be an important aspect for the law enforcement community. So we've run that range for, like I said, almost 30 years and made sure that every law enforcement agency in the county has been able to utilize that, as well as with other law enforcement entities, be it state and federal, had the opportunity to use it. And we want to make sure that continues. And but more importantly, that our county first responders are addressed first and foremost, and in our investment in that training center, if that makes sense. So I wanted to look at that. So I appreciate the priority, but I do think it's a project that is not something that we're anywhere close to putting a shovel in the ground or anything like that. Or
No, we are not close.
there's a lot of work still to be done.
Yes, I think the big advantage of what we were trying to do outside of being able to provide more training locally is indoor training, so that our officers are not shooting in terrible weather, and, we can control that a little better and have that other range available as well for outdoor needs. But we do have a few issues to work through still, and can continue to do that and, determine, again, what is the best use of the money, which are the highest priorities. We've revisited that even more recently. And, the governance is a question that we need to really dive down in, because everybody agrees that we need to dive down in that more. Everybody wants to talk about that more. And maybe that's where we go next, is determine that part before we go further with, what we actually would design. And, in order to, if you were to move forward in a 2026 debt issuance, again, we are going to have a design done. So I think, getting that governance issue figured out to decide whether or not we're going to design a building or design a site, that those are the next steps in my mind as to where we need to go to look at when and if.
And to address the animal shelter, obviously that is a passion of mine, but there's human aspects that are involved with getting a new animal shelter. The sheriff's department is the one that handles, animal control services. The staff at the animal shelter, you talk about doing a lot with a little. They've had to do that for years and years. We talk about burnout. Can you imagine having to work in a shelter where you have to put down almost 40% of the animals that you take in? That's a huge burnout for them as well. And so it's not just about the animals. There is a human component to all of this that they deal with. every single day. And so I think that we have to take all of that into consideration when we're talking about replacing some of these facilities that we do. That shelter is how old?
96, 98.
And we haven't done really much of anything in it since our population has grown tremendously since 96, 97.
Yeah, we actually had to, it used to be that animal control and animal shelter staff were co-located for a lot of good reasons at that location. They're not anymore, in order to allow the shelter to have some additional office space, those types of things. The animal control division is now housed out of what used to be the old garage, fleet management garage. So they're down the hill there. To be honest, we do have a number of times where a law enforcement presence is needed at the animal shelter due to what comes in, the types of things we have to deal with. So this new design, I sat through the process of design for it, brings that back into being, where animal control and animal shelter personnel would be co-located at one location. So you would actually free up the present location, as well as, I think there's other uses at the old fleet building other than just animal control, but it would have a law enforcement presence there.
And I understand. I work in probably one of the highest burnout industries there is. I deal with death, so I deal with. I understand that, but have we looked at also having our legislators work on tougher breeding laws, which would also control some of this? And I also wanted to point out, there is burnout, there is human aspects, but we also heard from departments yesterday who have gone 15 years with half a staff. And I mean, that's burnout too. The amount of workload we're putting on our own employees, they're burning out. There's a human aspect to that. So I'm not denying anything you say. We also have those other aspects going on in other departments here as well.
And, hold on. We're gonna do this.
The struggle's real.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you for bringing that up, by the way, about the breeding laws and leash laws and all of that. And I definitely agree that is something that we certainly need to look at on a legislative level and a local level. And Van, you and I have had multiple conversations with animals and, folks potentially not taking care of them the way that they should, and how the sheriff's office has to deal with that. And, I totally agree. That's another aspect of something that we should be definitely looking at.
And it is something that, we recently had to take custody of 53 dogs at one time. And in a residence that was just not fit for that environment for those dogs to be in. We did not have the capacity, so we brought in what's called a CAMET trailer. And we have to house them in very tight, condensed situations. We work with rescue groups to get them moved out as quickly as possible, and we had great success with that. But there are times, and it's more often than you would think, we have to go in and take 15, 20, 53 dogs at one time, or cats at one time. So there's a number of aspects to that. And to be honest with you, when I got into law enforcement, I didn't know I was going to be running an animal shelter. So and it's a different dynamic, but I have obviously a new appreciation for what goes on out there, and some of the difficulties you just run into. And as a population increases, the number of household pets increase, as well as the demand for pets, which comes into breeding issues that are not always in the best interest of those animals, or controlled. So
Whenever you see situations like that, if you're removing 20 or the situation with 50, are individuals held accountable, charged and prosecuted?
yes, we have an assistant district attorney that we work with the district attorney's office. That's great, and we look at appropriate charges to make, whether that be animal cruelty, those types of things, to make sure we're addressing those issues. And we also work with owners. Some, it simply gets out of control. they don't know how to stop what they've created. And so sometimes it's as simple as working with them to surrender the animals versus us taking them as a matter of an order, those types of things. So we try to look at both aspects of what's going on. I will tell you, sometimes there's also mental illness involved in some of that as well. And so, you know, it's a very measured approach. And just like this last time, we had staff from the district attorney's office that was on scene, so they could help us make that decision as to how we proceed in dealing with those situations. But capacity is an issue. I mean, it is, and I think, not to speak out of turn, but I think at our current location, expansion is just not an option due to the bedrock, I believe, and.
Well, we're on the side of a hill on one side, and then we're landlocked on the back side. We don't even own this property.
Right, it's owned by the city of
property.
Concord, right.
Which was something else I was just going to add to that. We do not own that property, and so the household hazardous waste is still on that property too. At some point, I'm sure Concord is going to want to reclaim that property. So, you know, we will keep that one out there as on the search, you know, for another location for that portion of it. But yes, you know, it's maybe not in our best interest, even if we could, to continue an expansion on that same site, just because we don't own it.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree, that's a very important issue, we need to take care of that. Maybe that would help the sheriff some too. But I just want to say, going back to the training center, it's my conviction, y'all may disagree with me, whenever we do have that in place, the sheriff needs to be in charge of it. That's just, you know,
Well, that's
we
what
don't
we're-
need to have any conflict about who's running this. It should be under the sheriff's authority.
Well, and I don't think anybody at this table is going to disagree with that, but whenever you have other municipalities putting equal amounts of money in, they don't necessarily feel that way. So that's the things we got to work through. So,
Absolutely. Thank you.
thank you. All right. So unless there's any other questions on that, we're going to move on to the fee study presentation, and that's, we have Matt Love, Susie Morris, and Jacob Thompson.
Good morning. I hope everybody's got the report. So the three departments that were affected by this report was construction standards, plan development, and the fire marshal's office. We worked with Wofford Consulting. They worked with each department individually and went through all the permit fees and salaries and all that stuff. So, to give you a little history or background of how this came about, so prior to 2020, permit fees for construction standards were valuation-based, and then in 2020, we went to cost-based permit fees. Now, what that means was, it was based on estimated cost back in before 2020. So if I had a contractor, two contractors, and contractor one built a 1,500 square foot house, contractor two built a 1,500 square foot house, but contractor one was doing granite, all the high-end stuff, higher cost house, even the same square footage, and contractor two was doing linoleum, carpet, a more economical house. The contractor one paid a higher permit fee. And in all reality, it didn't take us no longer to do the inspection on quality, because all we inspecting is the structural, the electrical, plumbing and stuff. So, when we did the original permit fee study back in 2019, 2020, the fee consultant recommended that we go to a cost-based, cost-based. And that means that everybody pays for what their square footage is, not what the estimated cost is. So it was a equitable distribution. So we've seen, and from 2020, we've seen a lot of our larger projects or specialty projects, the permit fees actually went down, and some of our smaller projects, the permit fees went up because a long time ago, permit fees, the specialty projects were paying for the smaller projects. So it was a more justifiable and equitable way to do our fees. And then when they did the estimated value prior to 2020, that value was given to us by the customer. So it wasn't, everybody has their own opinion of what that estimated value is. So we now have a more consistent approach. So then, prior to 2020, every trade would pull their own permit. So a building permit was pulled, and then the electrician had to come in, the plumber had to come in, and the HVAC contractor had to come in and pull their own permits. Well, then when we went to the new permit fee structure in 2020, we did a blanket permit where the contractor came in, he pulled the permit, and they obtained his electrical permit, plumbing permit, and everything that's associated with that project. So it actually, the contractors liked it better and the staff liked it better. It was less foot traffic. And then in January 2023, we made some adjustments on itemized permit fees, such as like bathroom remodels, patio covers, store sheds, and small miscellaneous stuff like expired permits. What we did, we tried to simplify some of those because they were too high at the time. And if you got a permit too high, people will take a chance and not getting a permit. And we have to deal with it later on when they go to refinance their house or resell it. And they finished their basement with no permit. And so we fixed that in 2023. And then where we're at now, we are updated our current permit fee schedule. Now, we didn't go back and reinvent the wheel. We just took the original fee schedule that we have in place and updated salaries, software increases, fuel, all that stuff. And that was our goal for updating the permit fee schedule. Now, there was one fee schedule that we had a huge concern about that we felt that was very low, and we had them reevaluate it, and that was our multifamily, our apartments. We had a lot of apartment complexes, and we felt that permit fee was too low. They take a lot of inspections. The average apartment complex right now, we probably do 90 inspections on, and so between all four trades. So we adjusted that one. So you'll see in a minute that the apartment complexes permit fee increased substantially. Now, before we get into this too much, so the report, the very beginning of it is a summary. And then you have your appendix tabbed. Appendix 1 will be planning and zoning fees. Appendix 2 is going to be construction standards. And Appendix 3 is going to be the fire marshal's fees. All right, I'm going to go over construction standards. What I did is I did a couple of examples just so you can kind of see how it's laid out and see what could be affected. And if you'll notice, I got current and then I got proposed. Now, this proposed is not the permit fee that we're proposing. That's what the fee consultant, we're just hoping to get feedback on how you want us to propose it for y'all to approve. So the first one I did was Outback Steakhouse, and it was 4,694 square feet. And so I would use Appendix 2B. Everything in Appendix 2B is going to be our new construction appendix. And then, so currently 4,694 square feet, that current permit fee would be $2,756.93. If we went with the fee consultant proposed permit fee, it will be $3,828.93. And that fee includes plan review, all the trades, inspections, COs, and everything. All right, the next one we did is a business. This is probably our most common occupancy classification because it's very broad. It's our attorney's office, our medical offices, our beauty salons, pretty much very broad group. So I just did a 2,100 square foot dentist office. The current fees to upfit this will be $1,591.63. The proposed fee is $2,269.93. So you can see it's a little bit of an increase from previous. All right, and here's the big one, the multifamily apartment complex. So I took our average apartment complex. We have a lot of these in the county. But basically, this is a 3-story apartment building that has 24 units, 26,800 square feet. And the current fee is $4,831.78. And the proposed fee is $8,460.93. All right, when I got over to Shell Shock, first thing I did is I called Iredell County, High Point, all the other, I said, what's your permit fees for apartments? And this proposed fee is in line with what they are charging. All right, our S1 shell buildings, this would be like a spec building, like a distribution warehouse or anything that somebody builds a shell and it does not have a tenant in it. So this is a 325,000 square foot shell building. The current fee is $5,547.25, and the proposed fee is $7,667.25. All right, just keep in mind, I know that's a large square footage, 325, and you're like, that's not much, but when they go to upfit it, when a tenant decides to lease that building, they're gonna go upfit it and they're gonna pull an upfit permit for that space, for what use. All right, I did some single-family dwellings or houses. So I did a custom home, a 3,200 square foot custom home. The current fee is $2,077.16, and the proposed fee is $59.96.
I was just going to jump in and clarify on, when he means custom home, in this case, it's a one-off, not a house that a tract builder has 10 houses that they repeat. So it wasn't meant custom home as in fancy home necessarily, just an individual type home.
And then I did a repeat, which will be our production builders. I did the same square footage, 3,200 square feet. And the proposed, the current fee is $1,443.59, and the proposed fee is $1,861.62. And again, that includes all the permit for that.
Now, why would that be, why would the production builder be different than, custom home? I mean, still
That
a
was
home, same
a
square
question
footage.
that we had in 2020. Why not be one fee? And that the intent is, usually a custom home is a lot of engineering and a lot of specialties, framing stuff. And a production builder is very repetition. Once it's a lot quicker. I will be honest, it's probably the only complaint that we get is our local contractors on here wish that they could do the repeat fee. And we could adopt a uniform residential, just single-family dwelling and not have custom versus repeat.
I see the arguments on both sides, but
Yeah, I mean, so once we have reviewed that plan, they don't have to review it again, so the savings is in the fact that they've already reviewed that house plan.
Right.
And so a custom home, it's a new one every time.
Right.
And so we're having to do a plan review, an individualized plan review on that home. So that's
Yeah.
where the savings comes in.
That was going to be my input here, is that, and I'll kind of touch on it in a minute, is that the thing to keep in mind here is that these numbers are based on cost recovery and what the county is footing the bill for whenever we're going out to do these services. So whenever an inspector can go out and do, 3 inspections in one trip, you're limiting fuel savings, you're limiting time. So it may cost the county less to inspect these row style homes versus going out and doing individual specialized inspections on a custom built home. So again, the numbers are based off what the county's footing the bill for, to do those inspections and services.
And I mean, I understand that, but, in fairness, some folks may say, well, home's a home, and, it's,
It's just a cost recovery, so
Right.
whether or not we want to, subsidize, in essence, some of the homes, because it's literally, with how we did these studies, we went through and talked about how much time each individual in that process spends touching that permit. So, from the intake clerk, and when we did this back, the original study, the consultant that worked with us, he said, if it's 3 minutes, don't put 5 minutes, because then it becomes exponential throughout the process, how much more you charge them. And so we really did go literally, okay, it's 3 minutes. And, each person in the process, how long does it take a plan reviewer to review a typical plan? How long does it take for an inspector to do each type of inspection? How long does it take for us to issue a CO? All of that, so that's all rolled into how the pricing was created. I get that there may be some disparity, but it's literally based on our time in that project.
And from my understanding, the old view of looking at this was a service we were providing people, which is why those fees were so low. But in essence, that turned into taxpayers subsidizing what they're paying for the permits. They're paying for the cost of what they're not actually paying. So why would we not put it at 100%? And that way it keeps everybody from subsidizing it. That means we're all paying for the permit fee. Just,
And again, that is the case, if we do not do 100% collection on it, it is being subsidized in some way. Now, I will say there are those few permits types that Matt mentioned that overall, we have an interest in people getting that permit because it's going to cost us more on the back end of that. If they, if somebody remodels their basement and then goes to sell their home and the realtor catches it, they call us, then we're having to go backwards to, and you may force them to even tear out some things to see what they did in order to pass that inspection and get it cleaned up so that they can sell their home. At that point, it becomes more a timely process for us that we're not really getting that much money on when we're double P'ing them, but it's just an expensive process at that point. So some of those we do kind of try to keep it simpler if we can. We have interest in making sure everybody gets a water heater inspection because water heaters are very dangerous. And so we don't want to charge so much for that people don't get it, you know, so it's just it's a safety hazard for them, and so we try to do that. So, you know, there are a few that we ideally would like to keep a little lower just so that people will do it. But for the most part, yes, you know, the idea would be to collect 100% of that cost if that is your desire to do that.
So these scenarios that we're going through, the proposed fee, is that 100%?
Yeah, the
Cost.
proposed fees are at 100%.
Okay.
Doggone it.
And then I did townhome.
I just want to
I'm
ask
sorry.
really quick,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. So have these, why have we not, because the thought of taxpayers having to subsidize companies that are building all of these apartment complexes and these houses in our community, and there's no impact fees that we can ask for or anything like that. So obviously, you know, this has impacted the school system and everybody. So why have we not been collecting 100% of these fees from the get-go?
Well, so most of the building ones are at 100% and have
Okay.
been. When you get, I don't know about fire, but in planning, definitely not. The decision was made previously on those that we would not go the full amount because it would go up pretty substantially. But the building ones in 2020, when we adopted the new schedule, like with the exception of the few things that I've mentioned where we intentionally, you know, wanted to keep that lower, everything else is pretty much 100% on those.
And there's some things too, when you get into fire, that is not necessarily elective on the person or the business or the entity's part. When it comes to annual fire inspections and those follow-up inspections, those are general statute mandated things. It's not things they're choosing to do. They're not choosing, yes, they're choosing to operate the business, but they're not choosing for us to come in and do that inspection. That's something that we're required to do by general statute. So I believe maybe at that time that it was, since that was not something that particular business was actually choosing to do, maybe they didn't feel like imposing the full fee was, you know, appropriate. I don't really know the decision that was made at that time because I wasn't here. But that snapshot, what that looks like now at 100% is in here, so you can see it.
I think what you're looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was a prior board of county commissioners that gave the guidance not to collect 100% of it, was it? I mean, that's exactly
Yes, we
what it was.
put options out on, you know, where do you want to take this, what level do you want to take this to? And we needed to update it anyway with salaries and all the things that Matt mentioned. It was time for an update. And so we had been working on that the past few months, and we wanted to bring it to you to make some of those decisions again. Let us know, you know, what level you want that to go to.
And what year was that previous board that decided not to move forward
So I
with?
think we adopted that.
2020.
Yeah, 2020.
In 2020?
I think they looked at it as like a service the county's provided
Was my understanding, is
Right.
that's how it was looked at, but
But the reality is the taxpayers are subsidizing the growth. And so I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Yeah, so, you know, when we did it from 2020, it was a dramatic fee increase. And, you know, we didn't want it to be so dramatic next time, and why did y'all wait so long to increase it? And honestly, when we increased it in 2020, you know, I had concerns that some of the big projects, the fees went down and our small projects fees went up. But we actually benefited from it for the first 2 years because of COVID. Everybody was doing home projects on their house, and now that's tapered off, and we're starting to see, hey, we're probably gonna have to go and adjust some of these fees because they're not quite right. I got just a couple more examples. So we got a 2,000 square foot townhome, and so that would be each unit, because each unit is considered an individual permit, it's actually considered a house. So right now, if I was doing a townhome, I would take the number of units, and the current fee is $1,507.99. Proposed fee is $1,930.85. All right, this is a remodel, so if somebody was taking a house, gutting it, new carpet, new sheetrock, moving dining rooms around, rewiring it, pretty much full remodel. 2,000 square foot remodel currently is $899.10. Proposed $1,163.30. Right. And so then Appendix C, 2C is our miscellaneous items. That will be like cell phone towers, generators, mobile units, daycares. So we added 6 new fee items. The 6 new fee items that we added were daycares, ABC permits, existing COs, group homes, like assisted living, foster care type situation, accessory dwelling units. Now, this one seems a little high, but basically this is somebody putting a house in the backyard. This will be full plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and that would be $517.93. We're starting to see a lot of these. Everybody jumped on the tiny house bandwagon, so we're starting to see a lot of this, and we're like, what do we charge them? Do we charge them for a garage or a pool house? Or so we created this fee for that. And our modular classrooms, that is our schools, most of the time modular classrooms. And then a couple of other miscellaneous items. So we have a couple cell phone towers, went from $347.76 to $442.34. A structural repair, so that could be a car running into a building, that could be termite damage in the crawl space, settling floor, tree fell on a house, whatever. Went from $309.70 to $403.19. A kitchen remodel is currently $312 and going up to $391.26. Retaining wall, $327.57, $419.30. And pole signs, $288.03 to $371.55. And wall signs, $282.27 to $364.21. And residential pools currently is $370.73, going to $481.58. And there's I didn't want to spend an hour talking about each one of the miscellaneous, but those are our highlight ones. Some of them went up 20%, some of them went up 30%, it's just different ones. And this is our MPE items, which will be mechanical, plumbing, and electrical items. So if somebody was doing a heat pump change out, a water heater change out, or reconnecting their electrical on an existing house. So the way that works is they pay a base fee and then the permit item. So if you look at Appendix 2D, at the very beginning of it, our base fee currently is like $69.98, and that base fee now, or proposed, will go up to $91.03. So it would increase $21, and then whatever their changing out or adding like a generator or whatever. So the couple big ones that we see are heat pump change out, water heater change outs, and residential electrical reconnects where a house was vacant, somebody buys it, and they need to get the power put back on, or a tree fell on a house, and the fire department came out there the night before and pulled the meter, and what they'll do is in order for us to put the meter back on, or have Duke Power put the meter back on, they will have to get an inspection. We verify that it's okay to electrify. So these didn't increase substantially. Heat pump change out, currently 125.11, going to 161.26. Water heater change out, 111.12 to 143.44. And a residential reconnect, 131.69 to 169.65. All right, so we presented this, and our goal is to get feedback of how you want us to present to y'all. What avenue do you want us to, do you want to go full 100% of what the fee consultant, or there's some items that you would like to see stay the same? Do you want to phase it where we could break it down in increments in 3 or 4 years where they pay 25% increase this year, so there's a lot of options. If you look on page 37 of the report, the fee consultant gave several, I think 5 different options for the permit fees. You could do 100%, you can do custom, you can do a hybrid. So if you wanted to, you could adjust the commercial and leave the residential, or adjust them all at one time. And we're hoping to present this in April to you for approval. And that will give our IT and software staff time to get it put in the software to go into effect July 1st of 2025.
When you say present this again, is that based upon which option we would like to choose, or just this presentation over again?
Yeah, which option?
Okay.
I have a question about the modular classrooms. So help me understand, it's tax money that pays for the school system anyway. So they're just giving that money back to us, right?
Yeah, so.
Couldn't we cut out the middle money somehow? And
Yeah,
and
so,
just-
well, like when Kelly and Mike were talking about their project, we would still charge a fee because that's what it would cost to run our department. I mean, it's basically taking that money from their department to our department so that we can run our department. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you could take the hit, I guess theoretically, but I think we have to would take action to waive those fees. I think we have to literally take action to waive those. I don't think we have the right just to waive them. But if you wanted to waive those, because it is just the difference is this construction standards is not really taking any county money. It's all fee-based. Now, I think fire and EMS or emergency management and planning, do have some taxpayer support, but that one is run completely that way. So it would just be up to you if you wanted to take that hit, which is fine, and we're fine either way with that.
Yeah, I was trying to think of it in my mind of how those things were correlated, and I'm like, well, we already pay for that though, so, but I get it. I mean, obviously, you've got to account for it from one place to the other, so that makes complete sense. I was just trying to figure that piece out, but thank you.
Where would the Well, where did these fees land? Is this in that fund that we had discussed yesterday? Some of the monies would be in that fund that we had discussed. The fees, you know, what we're currently getting or the increase, where is those monies gonna
Okay.
land within?
So they are within the construction standards budget. If we come in over budget, which we have, I mean, we budgeted fund balance, but we didn't end up needing it because our revenues came in good. But they land in the fund balance, which is what we were kind of talking about. We have 2 years' worth of salaries and like software costs and things of that nature that we're allowed to hold, because when we were talking about when we lost all the building inspectors years ago and we couldn't get them back, and I answer calls every day from builders who were upset with us because we couldn't get the inspections done fast enough when things came roaring back. So that's kind of why we have that option, to hold those positions and hold people so we don't lose that. And that was something that the state really, I think, wanted to see us do, but those monies have to stay in that account. We do have a planned renovation of the building inspections planning area that we would be doing out of that money. But generally, you know, that's where that money lands and stays. You know,
And can that money be used for positions that Susie were asking for you?
no, sir.
No.
It can only be used for construction standards positions. And we specifically asked that question before because we would have loved to have done that because it is very related,
It is.
but they don't consider it part of it.
Now, that is something we can talk about as we move through the presentation, as both I and Susie talk, is that with all three separate parts of the fee study, so far you just talked about construction standards, the money specific to that is held there. Fire and planning are separate from that. So what you can do with those articulated funds is different from just what construction standards hold. So we'll move it to the fire services piece of this. So there's a couple things here that I wanted to look towards. One is when you think fire, a lot of times you don't think a lot of the fee-driven things. So I wanted to make sure I give you a good snapshot of what all we do in fire that does generate fees. I also am going to touch on a little bit about workload and some of the things that this fee study did not necessarily go into the increased workload piece. It just updated the cost to do business piece. And so that does kind of play into this and ties in back to, again, with the increase in revenues, the ability to offset positions, and also kind of ties into the discussion from last night with the position request. And also there's a piece with fire services on the back end of this that I'm going to discuss that's kind of unique to us that I want to make sure I bring to your attention, just so that way you can kind of have that informed piece as well. So as far as fire services, what we do is as far as fines and fees, so all the unincorporated areas of Cabarrus County, we also provide the services to the town of Midland, town of Mount Pleasant, and the portions of the city of Locust that are inside of Cabarrus County. And we do those through contract with those municipalities. And I'll talk a little bit about this in a little bit when we're talking about possible new fees and income. So that includes fire inspections and all the related enforcement as required by general statute, the fire code, and county ordinance. That does include the re-inspections and follow-ups and enforcement on any violations that we find. Plan review and inspection of all our new renovated buildings and systems. So we work a lot with Matt and Susie for any type of new construction to make sure those are built to code, especially when we're looking at fire protection systems, sprinklers, fire alarms, and things of that nature. State licensure inspections, so nursing homes and daycares, foster homes, things of that nature. Subdivisions, so we look at all subdivisions for compliance with North Carolina Fire Code as far as apparatus access, making sure our fire departments can get into those subdivisions, and that those homes and things are built with proper fire protection as far as water supply, so that in case there is an emergency, we have the appropriate amount of water to combat any issues there. And then, of course, foster care and group home inspections. Additional permits and fees that are outside of that are more operational based, so things that we issue permits for and do inspections on: special events, carnivals and fairs, trade shows, explosives, flammable liquid storage, fireworks and pyrotechnics, blasting, tents and membrane structures, fire suppression and sprinkler system, fire alarm systems, ABC inspections, and food truck inspections, or mobile food unit. That's a new one to us this year. Open burning enforcement, so within the jurisdictional boundaries of our ordinance, we do also do burning enforcement, so open burning, illegal burning, things of that nature. And then additional non-fee responsibilities that are indigenous to our departments, emergency response, of course, working with our fire departments to make sure their budget, contracts, ordinance, things of that nature in place, coordinating their financial statements being filed at the county, the staffing grant, as you know, and then working with them to make sure that they're meeting those contracts and ISO compliance, and that they're, meeting the specific pieces that the county would like to see as far as protection of our citizens and the tax money that's being provided to them. We also do all the fire origin and cause investigations in the county, so if there is a fire, we do go in afterwards and determine what caused that fire. And again, the ultimate job in that is prevention, whether if it's a set fire, working with the sheriff's office to deal with anybody that may be involved, but again, ultimately is fire prevention and fire education and community risk reduction, and then assistance with emergency management department. Kind of to tie in back in this, and it's going to become relevant in just a minute, but I wanted to highlight, again, this study didn't really go into much of the workload change, but I did, again, tying into some of the discussion from last night, and I kind of hung Jason out to dry. I wasn't here last night. Wasn't required to be, but he didn't have all the numbers, so I did want to share a couple of those things. So this study did show we made some movements around a couple years ago to move a position to emergency management, which did pull some of the workload back onto our office. But the study did show a 40% overutilization, just specifically in code enforcement on the fire marshal position alone. As of November of this year, we were at 125% of our annual income already as far as revenue based for what we would normally generate for the county, based off of these permit fees and things, even without any adjustments. And that just shows the amount of workload that has increased, again, mostly due to growth. Over the past 2 years, we've added about 50 to 100 inspectable properties just off of going out and identifying places that weren't getting inspections that needed them. Our public outreach is at an all-time high. So one of the things when you do community service well, and you do customer service well, and you do work with people well, your job workload does increase because they expect more from you. You start making those connections, you start letting them know what's available to them, they do start reaching out more and expecting more of those services. And so just in the past year alone, we saw a 120% increase in public education programs. So last year, we conducted 108 individual education events last year alone. That's on top of our 1,014 annual inspections we do on properties, things of that nature. And again, a lot of this is driven by, again, good community outreach. You heard Kasha talk about it yesterday, where we're trying to connect with the community, make sure they know the services that are available to them. And Ashley in our office does a great job with community risk reduction and reaching out to our community members. They're working on a project right now to communicate. They went out and I think installed over 150 to 200 smoke alarms in a single day, just working with the Red Cross about a month ago, and they're working on a story right now to push out, and you'll see that. But as we make residents more aware of the things that we can do for them and help them with, the more they reach out to us and look for that. And so it really has added some workload on that. And that does drive cost up because it limits our time that which we have available to do code enforcement. And so the more time that goes into that, of course, the more it costs. And so that does play into this, and so I did want to provide that context to you. So specifically to this study, our key findings and considerations just for fire. So 100% of the fire-related fees right now are currently underpriced. That does require subsidy from general funds and taxpayers. So annual cost versus revenue for fire prevention, again, a lot of our stuff is not necessarily permit-based. When it comes to fire, coordinating with fire departments is not permit-based. Doing fire public education is not fee-based. Doing fire investigations is not fee-based. And so a lot of our work that we do is not fee-based, but a good portion of it is. So total cost for fire-related service right now related to fees, again, if you were to fund all the fees in the study at a 100% rate, you're looking at $143,000 revenue stream for that. Currently, what we're getting revenue-wise from fire fees is $35,000 to $65,000. I think we're looking to land, the study showed 65, that was a little high from what we are seeing in reality. Right now, we're looking at about $35,000 annual revenue off of just our fees. So showing that right now, you're looking at a taxpayer subsidy of $78,000 to $108,000 a year. So our current cost recovery rate is based on 25 to 45%, depending on how we're doing for the year and growth and things of that nature. Our largest deficits exist in miscellaneous fire items, so inspection, system plan reviews, and special permits. So that long list I read off to you a while ago that had to do with pyrotechnics and special events and things, that's where most of our deficits exist. It's not necessarily in doing the building plan review along with Matt. Again, most of those were probably adjusted up whenever theirs were adjusted last time. It's those more specific things that we see is where we're subsidizing most of that cost. Again, potential fee adjustments could recover $78,000 to $108,000 in additional revenue. And then again, the study did show that the fire marshal position is overutilized. And again, that's a lot of the administrative things that I'm doing to assist those assistant fire marshals in pushing a lot of this stuff through on the back end. So again, what is our goal? Is it cost recovery or cost subsidy? And I'm going to kind of skip through some of this because we'll discuss it at the end of the presentation, and you've already kind of discussed it to an extent. But if our goal is to subsidize the general fund and taxpayer dollars, just to what extent are we going to do so? So new identified fees and fines, and just like Matt said, there are some exceptions in here that if you do choose to go with a 100% cost recovery option, we do request that you allow us to give you some input on some specific ones. One of those new to us this year is mobile food preparation units. So those are food trucks. The fire code did add food trucks to go into effect July 1. We will have to inspect every single food truck that does exist and operates in the county. We do halt I think it was $68, I think is what the study recommended charging for those. We do recommend holding off on that right now. And the reason we're looking at that is because we're trying to do a joint effort between all the fire marshal's offices in the county. We do have 4 different fire marshal's offices, and we don't want to require those mobile food units to have to go to each one of those offices to get an inspection to be able to operate in the county. And so we're going to try to work together and get that done. But what that does require is that if we do end up charging a fee for that, it's going to require all 4 offices to coordinate on that fee. And so that might be a little bit difficult. So what we're afraid that might happen is if we implement a fee at $68 and Concord implements a fee at $100, then they're all going to come to Cabarrus County to get the inspection because we're cheaper. And we want to make sure we're coordinated on that to make sure that workload stays distributed and we don't cause any disparities there. So that's one thing to take into consideration. Reoccurring violations provisions set forth. We did add a couple fines. So fines do have some pretty specific things. When fines in general statute, you have to go to the school system. That is something that's kind of limited, but our fine generation as far as revenue is pretty limited. We use fines as a method to encourage compliance with the code. We use those as a last resort. We have policies and procedures in place that make sure we do our due diligence before we get to that place, but there are some things that we identified that needed to be added as far as fines that will allow us to encourage people to comply a little bit better. One of those was recurring violations. If we're going in year after year and we're seeing the same violations every single time, that it lets us know that the business owner is not paying attention to the things that we're trying to communicate to them, and that they're not taking consideration. And it may be that we need to generate a fine in order to get their attention to say, this is an issue that we're seeing on a repetitive basis. We probably need to handle this. Failure to maintain life safety equipment. So we see repetitive issues where people are failing to maintain their sprinkler systems, their fire alarm systems, and things of that nature. Those are critical systems in buildings because they have a direct connection to life safety. And so we did feel like it was important to add a fine to make sure we encourage people to get those things kept in working order. Violation of a stop work order, so something we're having to see more and more, especially as we're seeing water supply issues in the county, is especially with our row home builders and our mass home builders, is that they're building homes and doing work in face of times where we're telling them they can't quite yet start work because of a water supply issue due to fire protection. And we are having to issue stop work orders. And normally the first question I get is, well, what if I continue to work? Right now, we don't have any fine to say, well, this is what it's going to cost if you do continue to work. And so that's why that fine's added there. Violation of an order to vacate or abate. So if we do find a building that is so unsafe that we do issue an order for somebody to vacate that building, right now, we don't have a fine to encourage them to do so. And then not obtaining a permit is required by North Carolina Fire Code and ordinance. So all that long list of things that I listed off earlier do require a permit for each of those. And so if somebody chooses to move forward with one of those actions without getting the permit, we did feel like we needed to add a fine in order to encourage and help enforce that as well. So just some examples of adjustments for us. I'm not going to go through this list exhaustively, but fire alarm systems plan review, you'll see adjusted from 300 to 705, so that was about a 43% increase. Special events is normally is one of the ones that we saw a bigger increase for, so it went from $300 to $1,463. One of the things, and this is a topic of discussion as well, that I would bring back to you is foster care inspections. Currently, we charge for foster care inspections. I personally, and you know, whether or not it's my place to have a personal opinion of this, I personally feel like that might be something that we want to take a look at, is whether or not we want to charge somebody that is doing a service and has a foster care home. Do we want to continue to charge them to do that inspection? Right now, in our current fee schedule, we charge them $40 an inspection. The recommendation, again, this is not, there's no opinions that go into what was generated. This is based on our cost alone. The recommended fee is $249. And I personally feel like that's, for somebody that's doing a service by giving somebody a child a home and doing that foster care service, that's something that I feel like we would need to discuss before we move forward with that. So just a snapshot there of what, you know, we're seeing as far as increases. But again, there are some special circumstances that outside of 100% that we would identify and bring to you for special consideration. So again, I'm going to skip through the possible options real quick because we kind of already touched those again, and we can circle back on that. One thing that I did want to, and I talked about some unique circumstances when it comes to fire services. So one thing that I wanted to bring to your attention that I don't know that it's been discussed. It hasn't been discussed since I've been here. I don't know the history on it, if it's ever been discussed. You'll see option number 5 there, new revenue sources and alternative funding. And these are abbreviated versus what's in your actual packet, but introduce new fees for currently uncharged services is one of the things that was kind of pulled out of there. There's 2 things here that I wanted to bring to your attention. One is that right now we do not charge for periodic fire inspections. So that initial inspection required by general statute, required by the North Carolina Fire Code, we do not charge a fee for that initial inspection. That is required by general statute. So a business owner, every single business owner in Cabarrus County that is operating a business under the jurisdiction of the fire code has to have an inspection. We inspect every one of those annually. We go in, spend anywhere from 30 minutes to, if it's corning, it's 2 whole days. We cover the entire building top to bottom, and we look for everything from, the fire code is a maintenance code. We ensure that everything that was done whenever the building was built is continuing to be maintained. And so if we see issues with electrical wiring, we see issues with fire protection systems, whatever it may be, those are the violations that we're citing and making sure are getting fixed. And again, that's ultimately to protect the citizens, the unknowing visitors, the unknowing employees of those businesses, that they're not thinking about fire safety. They're thinking about going to work and earning their paycheck, and they rely on us as county government to make sure that they're safe. And so that's where we're going into this. Right now, we do not charge a fee for those initial inspections. Now, I will tell you, across the state of North Carolina, there are some municipalities that are going towards charging a fee on that initial inspection. But right now, what you're going to find is more often than not that most, especially in county government, you're not seeing a fee charged for that initial inspection, again, because it is required through general statute, and the governments don't necessarily want to pass that burden on to the business owner. But it is something that you can consider. Here, the other piece of this, and this was the second thing I wanted to bring up here, is that I spoke about our contracts with the town of Midland, town of Mount Pleasant, and Locust. Right now, we currently do not charge them anything for our services. So we do provide all the fire prevention services in those municipalities, but there is no cost associated with that. We do have a contract with them that says we'll provide these services, and I think the contracts that are currently in place date back to 2006. It's been on my list to have those updated since I've been here, but workload and things have not allowed for that. But they say, you'll enforce code in this side of the city limits as you do in the county, and they're required by general statute to provide those services inside the city. General statute requires them to provide fire protection services, fire prevention as far as inspection services inside those municipalities. But right now, we're not seeking any reimbursement from them on that. So that is something else to take into consideration.
So you said, I'm sorry, you said Midland, Locust, and
Midland, Mount Pleasant, inside the city limits, and then the little, I think there's 10 to 15 businesses that we inspect inside the little sliver there at Red Bridge Boulevard that's in City of Locust inside of Cabarrus County. So right now, we have around between 100 and 115 businesses in each of those municipalities between Mount Pleasant and Midland that make up about 20 to 30% of our workload, just because of the density there right in those municipalities. So with those, right now, we're not recouping any costs from those municipalities. So just something to take into consideration with that. As far as numbers on cost-wise for the percentage of what we have going to that, I don't have those figures ready available. I'd have to really dig down and work those out. But again, probably 20 to 30% of our inspection-based activities goes towards those municipalities.
I'd like to see the numbers on that.
Yeah, and I can definitely, me and Jason can work with finance and Kelly and really dial those in and we'll get you some true numbers on what that looks like.
the other thing is, and you had said regarding the, being a business owner and not wanting to pass, the initial fee on to the business owner. Somebody's paying that fee, and if it's not the business owner, it's the
It's the
taxpayer.
taxpayer, yeah.
And I don't want to pass that on to them, so.
It definitely is
that's just
something
my-
you guys could take into consideration as far as charging for that initial inspection. We'll be dealing with the brunt of it on the front end, of course, and we have no problem doing that. The fire marshal is not everybody's favorite person anyway. We're used to that.
It's okay, neither
Yeah.
is a county commissioner, so I get it.
We're used to that. It's definitely something too, and again, the fee study consultant didn't put any suggestions in here on what that would look like, but we could dial down and give you some numbers on if we did charge a fee for that initial inspection, what it would really need to look like.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing the numbers on that.
Okay.
How much revenue we are losing by not, or what we're charging the taxpayer would probably be the better way to explain that. And I do appreciate what you said about the foster care too.
Yeah, there's some specific things in there that we want to make sure we pull out to bring to your attention that, you need to consider before you just make a true 100%
Right.
adoption of that fee schedule.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's all I had. If you have any other questions for fire.
I also appreciate your attitude about the foster care situations, because, there's bad apples in every barrel, but I think the majority of people who do foster care really do it because they care about the kids. They don't see it as a business or anything. There's some abuse, but I think it's minimal. And so I would be hesitant too about raising that fee on them.
Yeah. And we do quite a bit of foster care inspections. I would say we probably do 15 to 20 a month. And the state requires them to have an inspection to make sure that the home is safe and a safe environment when it comes to fire safety for the children that are going to be staying there. And so we go out, we work with the parent, we schedule a time, we go visit the home, walk through the state-specific form, and then above and beyond the state-specific things that they're looking for, we normally try to give them recommendations too for things that they can do to improve the safety of the home. So.
So the money that this generates for your department can go towards the position.
It could, yeah, and that's what I'm saying is, for construction standards, that money has to stay there. But those fees that we generate do go back into the general fund. They can be used however. So yes, any funds that we generate could, in theory, if you chose to do so, be reconcentrated back into our department to go towards the requested position.
I'm not opposed to, the fee increase on some of this. I will disagree with Commissioner Lindsay a little on the new business. If it's a statutory requirement as a business owner, it doesn't matter, I'm gonna say government, it doesn't matter what level of government is requiring this inspection, and then I'm, as a business owner, I guess initially opening, it's just an additional cost for someone to break into the private sector. So I understand exactly what you're trying to say. As far as recouping the cost, I understand that. But, I mean, for instance, within my own business, we have to have in the restaurants, we have to have the health inspection reports. I actually have to pay for that. And I don't think that that's right because it's statutorily required. And I didn't ask them to come in and inspect. Now, I appreciate what they do because anytime somebody, is going to eat out, you want to be protected and make sure that, everything is done appropriately. But I have to pay a fee on that inspection annually, and I don't feel that that's appropriate. It's just another government overreach, in my opinion. And like I said, it doesn't matter if it's what level it's, required. So just something I thought about. So.
And you typically have those two lines of thinking when you talk to business owners and community members. You have one that's like, that's the cost of doing business, and then you have the other that's, I don't want to be another burden onto a business owner who's trying to, be productive and provide for their family.
Yeah.
So you typically have those two lines of thinking, and we receive those when we're out in the field. So.
And I see both sides. With my role being a business owner, but then being, on the government side, I see both sides. So.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
There's also another way of looking at it is they're taking a step out to provide jobs here locally. And do we really want to hit them right off the bat with something like you said that's statutorily required? Obviously, the continuing ones every year, the initial, a lot of ways to look at it. And they are stepping out to provide, they're paying taxes, they're stepping out to provide those jobs. So.
At least you're not trying to take it as far as doing an annual fee. Then I'd really be upset.
Well, that's the thing is that we do the inspection annually. So if you do that initial inspection as a fee, you technically would be charging an annual fee.
Oh, you would?
Yeah,
Oh.
we touch every single business every single year.
Okay.
So,
Then I would take issue with that because of, like I said, my current.
we're going to show up every year around the same time and come visit you and make sure your business is safe.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I want businesses to be safe, public spaces, but that is another, that is another roadblock for businesses. That,
It was identified in the study, so I did want to make sure I brought it to your.
I am interested in the municipalities, though, the numbers on that, like.
We'll dial into those and make sure we provide those
All right.
those numbers to you.
Any other questions, comment? All right, thank you.
Yes,
So
sir.
you gotta go too? The next item is lunch, so.
So my presentation is a little bit different. So to give you some background about the planning and zoning fees. So when we started looking at this project in 2018, because it actually took us 2 years to complete this project because of the amount of work that had to go into it to determine the time for the fee, for, each task that had to be required, for, that permit to be issued or that case to be processed. The last time that the planning and zoning fees, a new schedule had been adopted was 2006. So at that point, we were 12 years out from what had been adopted. As you can see, so in your packet, you have, we're going to work through a case study. What you have is what was looked at in 2018. So this shows you, it's set up the same way with the same percentages. So, talking about, do you do the standard discount that's referenced in the study? Do you do a capped increase? Do you do phase to 100%? At that time, it was decided, like fire, that planning and zoning would be considered more of a service. So most of the increases that we had were less than 20% of the full cost recovery. Several of them were less than 10% of the full cost recovery. We did adopt some new fees at that time, and that structure is working. So that fee structure was to add in some base fees and then some additional costs depending on the size or the number of lots, which would increase it exponentially based on the time and the work being done on that particular project. The only fees that were even close to 100% of cost recovery were services in excess. And what that is, for example, we have a 750-acre solar farm. Staff has had to go out there probably no less than 10 times, which is not normal. So once we get past, we will do an inspection, a re-inspection. Once we get past that point, then we are charging this fee in excess. So that is the cost on the applicant for non-compliance or having to correct things that weren't done. But again, once we get past that second visit, that's what we're doing. The only other one that is close to 100% is zoning non-compliance citations. But the way that this was set up, and this is one of the differences that I would like to point out to you. We calculated the time, and what we found was that the majority of the time is actually spent prior to issuing the warning. But the warning has no citation, no fee assigned to it. So that time cost was then distributed through the citations that are actually issued. So if we get somebody a warning violation or a warning citation, they have 30 days to fix it. If they don't fix it, the clock starts ticking, and then each time when we go back out, so we would go back out like at that 30-day or around that 30-day time frame. If it is not corrected, then we have the ability to issue that next citation and then give them 15 days to try to make the corrections again. So what you will see is 100% cost recovery on this, but distributed through the process. So it's not exactly tied to one thing, because again, we didn't realize that the majority of the time is actually spent before you issue the warning, because you have to do the research. So that is why that one is different. I did go through and do a few examples. One of the things that I do want to bring to your attention is Jacob mentioned something called percent overutilization. That is something that is in this complete study. I can't remember it's like 400 pages, I think, for the complete study. But as part of the time for each position, what we have to enter, it then tells us percent utilization. And a lot of the planning and zoning are over 100%. When it comes to the cost recovery, I did go through a few of these to give you an example. So for example, a commercial permit for us, our workload right now, and as Jacob referenced as well, workload was not updated as part of this. So if you're looking through the spreadsheet that I gave you versus the consultant's report, you will see some differences. Because workload has shifted since 2018. So to look at revenue potential, you kind of have to go back and look at your workload. So example, like for a commercial permit, we currently are issuing about 30 during the course of a fiscal year. So 30 at 150 is right about $4,500. At the full cost recovery rate, that would shift to 555, which would be $16,650. So that's a significant difference. That's over $12,000 difference. But if you look at this spreadsheet, what I did was kind of tried to show you what the consultant is speaking to in the study. So the yellow is the full cost recovery. So that's what they've said at 100%. This is what it costs you to provide this application service, this permit, this plan review. This is what it costs you. What they're talking about with the standard discounted rate is maybe you would just pick one. You pick, okay, we want to go to 50%, and that's where everything lands, except if there are a few outliers. With the capped increase, that would be an up to percent. You give us the authority you can go up to 100%, but then you come back to us with what you want. So that is what is kind of displayed. And then also kind of showing you, if we have a fee for consideration, this is what it would look like. So for example, on a commercial permit, the fee for consideration would be $275. So that would be an increase of $100, still not even close to 100% recovery. And at that rate, it would be about $8,250, which would be a potential revenue at partial recovery of $3,750. So, you know, for a long time, planning and zoning was considered a service. So because we didn't really make any type of significant changes to our fee schedule in 2018, like Matt said, you know, it was a big shift for them. We didn't experience that big shift, but we need to start looking at the fees because it is, you know, there is a lot of time and effort and money being spent on these things. And if you look at our list, most of these, unlike some of the fire marshal's requirements, or, you know, inspections, most of these are more owner or applicant initiated things. You know, I want to put a shed at my house. I want to subdivide my property. If you can kind of think of it in those terms. So this does kind of give you an example of what that would look like. Like Matt said, we are looking for some direction on, you know, how to handle this. You know, the fee structure itself has stayed the same, so you do have apples to apples, because the only thing that was updated from the 2018 and the fees that are adopted now would be the cost recovery time, if there was a new fee added. So we are not proposing for any new fees. We are just proposing for our fees, 2 of them to be separated because we were handling them as one. So the accessory dwelling units are something that we are seeing. Those do take more time. So that was added in to account for the workflow for that type of permit. Same thing with an accessory structure that contains residential space. That's not necessarily an ADU full on, but it is, you know, somebody wants to have a garage and they want to have a little bit of living space on top for a guest or something like that. So we are proposing to kind of split those out. So on here, you might see where it says new. And I did on this try to update some of, you know, the numbers so that you could see the workload. But it kind of gives you that graduated structure. And then also, you know, here's maybe a starting point, like say we start at 50%, but really, you know, we are looking for direction from you all on, you know, is it 100%? Where do we land? You know, we may be different from construction standards, different from fire. Fire may be different from construction standards, but just looking for that direction. Overall, the consultant, if you look in the study at full cost recovery, there is a potential for an annual revenue of $580,000. Based on the current fees that we are collecting, it's $86,000. So it's a very significant difference, depending on how you look at it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about what's presented or the planning and zoning structure.
Any questions or comments? Well, and you may have a question or a thought, you know, after this and absorbing it. I know Susie is always available to answering questions, which I know you guys are as well, but she just ended. That's why I mentioned her, but, you know, feel free to reach out to her. You know, we will be making a decision on this, so think about it, and if you need any more guidance or questions, you know, answered, please reach out.
And if you want us to cost out the 2 positions that she requested in relation to the generated revenues, if, you know, if you don't want to go 100%, do you want to capture the cost for those? You know, we can do that as well to help you kind of determine if you want to go 100% or you don't want to go 100%. You know, if you wanted to fund those positions through revenues, we could do that.
I would like that information, because even, like I said, if we don't go 100, if we know how much it's gonna cost, we can look at the chart to at least see what it's gonna take to, because it's been 15 years. It's time, so.
I mean, I absolutely would love to go 100. I think for this portion, we're seeing dramatic increases. The others are not quite as much, but I will tell you, if we do go 100, your emails and phone will, well, and that doesn't mean that we don't make the decision, but I mean, you know, this, it's a pretty big decision here, so. I think somewhere in the middle would probably be ideal, in my opinion, but obviously I'm 1 of 5, so.
Yeah, I mean,
I wish this would have been resolved in the past, but.
yeah, I mean, and, you know, there's, you know, you can stage it, you know, and
Right.
say, we're gonna do this much this year and that much in another year, you know, there's options around that, but, we can cost that out and kind of give you an idea on the positions and how much we would need to recapture for those, and, you know, as a starting point for your conversation at least.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the information. All right, so we're gonna take a break now for lunch. We will reconvene in roughly 30 minutes, maybe 40. We'll see. So.